Hey Melissa, how you doing?
I'm well, Edie. How are you?
I'm good. You ready for this?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, let's get started. So we're here today to talk about, the title is 10 employees and 15 personalities. So each of us may have a number of employees with different personalities given the day and the time, and so we're here today to talk to you about how to make your office a more happy and productive workplace. As you know, that most employees don't work to their full potential. So we want to share with you our experiences as to the best way to motivate them. We'll share the different types of management styles and the different types of employees and how they can work together. Hey, Melissa, you want to introduce yourself formally?
Sure. My name is Melissa Lombardo, formerly Melissa Baer. I currently work for Sarasota County Property Appraiser in beautiful Sarasota, Florida. We have about 200,000 parcels, and I have about 35 employees currently working for me. Prior to Sarasota, I worked for Tyler Technologies for 17 years, and while at Tyler, I managed probably hundreds of employees.
And I am Edye McCarthy. I am the assessor in the town of Greenburgh in Westchester County, New York. I've been an assessor in the profession for 32 years. Nope, I know I don't look old enough. Thanks for the compliment.
You are 10.
and and I have 10 employees currently, managed many more in other places throughout my term as a my term as a manager. So
If you want your staff to be at their best, you need to know how to motivate them. So here's a quote that we love from Dwight Eisenhower. Motivation is the art of getting people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it. And the second part is the key to this presentation.
so I love this slide actually. And so you have your highly engaged employees. They tend to produce and exceed more than their performance tasks, which we'll talk about, throughout the presentation. So as we're going through this, identify what type of employee and what motivates your team. And we're going to give you some ideas on how to take your leadership style to better engage with your staff.
So our high level management philosophy is that you have to understand the people that work for you and how to get the most from them and let them shine. If you recognize their core personality traits, it's going to help you relate to them more effectively. And if you can relate to them more effectively, then you're going to be more empathetic and it's going to enhance your ability to lead. And all of these things, we hope, as it has for us, will achieve better results.
So the next slide shows different types of management. And what we wanted to talk about here is the visionary and the democratic, transformational and coaching. But all in all, that puts together, and you can read the slides yourself. But what we wanted to talk about is whether being a micromanager is good, or being like a visionary or democratic, where you bring in your staff and they're part of the decision-making process. So in that respect, you have, again, the micromanager or the hands-on manager, or like a visionary is firm yet fair. And as we go through these, so what I wanted to throw at you, Melissa, is what type of manager do you think you are, and how'd you get there?
Well, out of these four, I know we have another slide coming up. Out of these four, I really think that I have a little bit of each of them. But if there is one that's stronger than the others, it's definitely the transformational and pushing employees past their comfort zone. That is really what energizes me as a manager, what gets my energies flowing. And I think the way I became that manager, much like you said a little earlier, is I think you want to be managed you want to manage the way you want to be managed. And so for me, being pushed was the key to my success in my career. I had managers that pushed me beyond where I think I could go. And without that, I don't know that I would be sitting here virtually with you today. How about you? What type of manager are you?
It's interesting what you just said. I feel that I am totally uncomfortable going outside of my comfort zone. And I think that that's human nature. So I like that transformational type of management because nobody wants to just voluntarily go outside of their comfort zone. So as you, I was pushed, and yeah, of course. I was pushed outside my comfort zone. So, and every time I got outside of it and produced, one particular manager that I keep going back to kept pushing me harder and harder. So it made me sitting here with you today. So I agree.
So here are some of the less positive management styles. And I think that we can both agree that neither of us fall in any of these categories. We probably wouldn't be doing this presentation if we did. So the less positive are the autocratic, the servant, the laissez-faire, and the transactional. And so as you read the slides, you can see, hopefully, that these types of managers are going to struggle to motivate their employees because they're hands off, they're wanting to be your friend, they don't invite their staff to offer ideas or even their input into how the management of the staff is going to be. And so these are the ones that if you think you fall into one of those, you probably want to, take some work and go back to the other slide and work on ways to positively change your management style. So Edye, have you had any of these as a boss?
Well, unfortunately, I think we've all had some of these as a boss, and I don't know so much if they're bad management styles as they are status quo management styles. So you're not going to be, in our opinion, I think you agree, you're not going to be, going outside the box. You're not going to be, moving forward at a quicker pace than the other types. But like I said, unfortunately, I think for me, yes, I've had these types of managers, mostly the laissez-faire, hands off, no guidance given. And it, as an employee, it was very frustrating for me because I tried. I don't need somebody to micromanage me, and I don't need somebody to hold my hand, but a little bit of guidance and a little bit of push is better for my type of personality. So how about you? Have you had any of these?
Yeah, I like you, I've had them all. I didn't struggle with the laissez-faire because I am someone who doesn't mind going outside the box, and I enjoy the freedom of doing my own thing. But I also recognize that I'm a high performer, and that's not typical. And so the laissez-faire is going to struggle for anybody who needs any kind of guidance or structure in their workplace. The autocratic for me is definitely the toughest challenge as a boss that I've had. I like to be heard. I like to have my input. I generally have some ideas. Being shut down from that avenue, from that opportunity, was always very difficult for me.
Yeah, I didn't really have that experience, being shut out. The older I got, the more I kind of pushed my way in to be part of it. So not that necessarily my bosses ever wanted me to, but so yeah, I really I don't think I had that experience. But needless to say, we don't really have to read this slide, but I think it's so important that we are going to, that management is definitely by far one of the hardest jobs in the working world. There's a reason why we've all had that one terrible boss. Hopefully, the previous slides helped you identify the management traits that you should keep and the ones that you should not.
So these are the core personality traits that can affect the performance of your employees. We have the freeloader, the worker, and the entrepreneur. Chances are you're going to have some of all of these core personality traits on your staff. And I would like to think that it's like a bell curve, and because we're all in appraisal and statisticians, we all know what that bell curve looks like. And so you're going to have a few freeloaders, you're going to have a few entrepreneurs, and the bulk of your workforce is going to be the workers. And while as managers, I think we all love having the entrepreneurs, it would be a tall task if all of your employees were entrepreneurs and they were all seeking this higher purpose, and that is a challenge as a manager to juggle all of those different priorities and giving all of these great ideas and puzzles and problems for your entrepreneurs to solve. You know, it's going to exhaust you as a manager. And so it's always important to have that bulk of the staff that they're going to do their job. They're going to come in and they're going to be dependable and they're going to be loyal. And so I think that any good workforce is going to have a complement of each of these three.
And you'd say comfortably that in your 35 employees, you have a little bit of each, so you fit into that bell curve?
Yeah, I think it's almost a perfect bell curve, to be honest with you. I do have the vast majority are in the workers, and I am lucky enough to have a couple of entrepreneurs currently on my staff. So.
Sorry, didn't mean to hit that button. Okay. I think I am too with my 10 employees. I think that I do fit into that bell curve as well. I tend to lean towards the worker and the entrepreneur. So I'm pretty lucky when it comes to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So now we have the types of employee personalities and how to motivate them. As our little disclaimer, I need to add that Edye and I are not psychologists and we're not behavioral scientists. We are in no ways experts on management personality or personality types in general. However, because of our years of experience and the number of employees that we've managed, we do consider ourselves to be expert practitioners of management. So don't get too hung up on the labels. Hopefully, as we go through each of these, you'll recognize them as employees in your office, and hopefully we'll give you some insight into how to deal with them and best motivate them. So the first one is the defender. Defenders are loyal and dependable. They do seek security and they want stability. Your defenders are going to be the eyes and the ears of your office. So it's always important to keep your door open for them, to hear out what they have to say. They will often come to you at another coworker's, about another coworker's problem or issue. And chances are it's an issue that they also have. And so by hearing them out, you're going to know what's going on in your workplace, what issues may be bothering people. So it's always important to hear them out and listen to what they have to say and to hear what resolution they would like to see. The challenge with the defenders is their resistance to change. And for any employee who stays with an office for any length of time, they're going to experience change. They're going to have a CAMA program change. They're going to have appraisal assignment changes, any number of things. And so getting them to accept those changes is the challenge. It seems very simple. However, I've had great luck when dealing with my employees that are resistant to change. I always tell them that they have to try, believe it or not, just try it. And I will not engage in a conversation about their concerns or anything about the new technology or new assignment until they've given it an opportunity to see what it's all about. 99.9% of the time, they come back to me and say, wow, this is a great tool. I'm learning a lot. I'm excited. Very rarely do they come back after and say, yep, I was right. I don't like it. And so, that has actually worked for me. Make them try it. And before you start engaging in all that conversation about why something's not going to work.
So that's part of the management style about you pushing your employees outside their comfort zone. So I like that. That's good. So the friend employee, they're seeking belonging and friendship from you. They're definitely a team player with the rest of your staff. And in order to be able to motivate a friend type of employee, you take them into your confidence. So I do have a couple of those, and it motivates them to work harder for themselves. Not quite sure how that dynamic is, but it does seem to work. They also have a tendency of motivating, if they feel comfortable with you on that personal level, they also have a tendency to motivate the other employees in the office as well, that I've found. So I like that. I like that type of employee.
So how do you do the social media, Facebook line with coworkers, and where's your line? Do you cross that line?
So as a friend type of a personality of an employee, I do not cross that line, and it is a fine line. I have some employees that I would love to go out for a drink with, and I don't, because there is that line. Everybody, of course, these days is on Facebook and social media and whatever else is out there. I don't entertain that at all. As a manager, I personally don't feel that it's appropriate. And albeit, I do like to see what they're up to on Facebook, because, sometimes an employee might not be feeling so well, but, that Facebook pretty much does tell you where they're at.
Exactly. I had to learn that lesson the hard way.
Uh-oh.
So our next personality type is the star, and they seek recognition, respect, and social esteem. So the star requires feedback. I believe in positive feedback for every personality type, but the star, if you want them to shine and be the star they can be, really needs that positive feedback. And the more public it is, the more they will respond to it. So if you've got an email blast announcing their promotion, or there's a newsletter in which they are mentioned in it, or even, they're the star of your newsletter. As we have one of those monthly newsletters, and one employee is highlighted each issue, they're going to love that kind of thing. Of course, most of your employees are going to want that kind of positive public feedback. And so the challenge with the star is to make sure that they earn it. They have to be the star to get those things. I also use things like conferences, because those social interactions are very important to them in building their own reputation and rapport and connections with other people. So you can have a star if they're really motivated for that recognition and respect. They're going to be self-motivated. They're going to have a fire in their belly, and likely are going to achieve far more than some of these other personality types. The challenge is when they're really seeking the social aspect of it, and they're really just looking to be the most popular person on the team or the center of attention. And then you have to worry about balancing their productivity at work, while still allowing some of that social interaction. And of course, it's really critical as the manager to engage in that social interaction and get to know that star on a personal level, in order to be able to provide the feedback that they really crave.
You know what I found? That bringing them into that personal level, the star and the friend type of employee, when I do have to reprimand them, and unfortunately that happens, that they seem to take it better, because they know that, you pretty much, as a manager, you have their back. So when they do something wrong, they know they do something wrong. And so they seem to accept that more and change to melt to that. So,
I mean, I think that's the key to all of these. Once you've learned how to connect and with every personality type on that personal level, you are going to reap those benefits of trust and loyalty, that really make management work. Because without that trust, if they don't trust you as their manager, then, it's all going to go off the rails.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I like how you said that. So let's go on to the director. So this particular employee personality, they seek power. They influence and control over other people within your office. Needs the job to reflect the power, and by doing that, they absorb training. They love to be stretched, so which is a good personality type for my managerial style, because I like to push people outside the box, and I like to stretch them, and I like to teach them. So this type of employee works well with my type of management style. However, there's a real fine line between a director type of employee and somebody who's, going off on their own tangent. So I've had employees like this before, and, I've had to pull them back in, and I would never embarrass an employee in public. That is my mantra. If you do something wrong as one of my employees, I'm going to call you in the office and the gloves are off. But I would never do anything like that in person, because I treat employees the way that I want to be treated as an employee. And I don't like being embarrassed in public, as I don't believe anybody else does. So with a director, they're a lot stronger of a personality. So you handle them just a little bit differently.
Yeah, my staff knows when they get the email with the subject line that says, please come see me.
They know they're in trouble. Yep. How
So
about,
do you struggle with the directors overstepping and, because they desire power and control over others, that they'll, sort of take over managing employees that you don't want them to manage?
I do. I struggle with that regularly, actually. And I'm constantly talking to the director employee and I'm talking to the other employees. You have to reiterate, they all know you have that title as manager, but you have to reiterate that if there's a problem, if there's questions, if there's whatever, that they really need to go to you because you fix it. Where you have a director type of personality, they want to fix things. That's what I've found. They're the fix-it person, and it's still ultimately your responsibility.
Right.
So
and even if they fix it, I want to know about it.
if they fix it, I want to know about it. Correct. So, as far as the builder, they seek money and material as satisfaction. Their performance rewards, they need to be linked, and regular progress reviews are necessary for this type of employee. Seeing as though I only have 10 employees under me at the moment, I give all of them regular reviews. We talk about the good things, we talk about the bad things, we talk about, how things should run and how things are running. And it seems to work with all my different personality types. And like we said at the beginning, you have, one day you could have an employee come in with one personality type, and at the end of the day, it could be a different personality type. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, they all need to have that review because it brings it home. So.
Right, it sets goals, it sets expectations, and everybody's clear about what needs to happen and what it means to be productive and perform up to what they're supposed to.
Yeah, I feel like if you as a manager don't tell them about your expectations, Absolutely. They don't know. They can't guess.
Right, and they shouldn't guess.
Yep.
So next we have the expert, and they seek knowledge and prefer specialized roles. So for me, when I think of experts, I typically think of my commercial appraisers. Very rarely do you see a commercial appraiser who also appraises residential property. The management within our industry typically are residentially trained and educated appraisers. So commercial appraisers generally are very specialized, and you will motivate them through training and development, particularly in their area of expertise. Mm-hmm. So this can be challenging for a number of reasons. First of all is, rarely we need someone so specialized that they're only going to do one appraisal, one property type, like, power plants or something. And that's really what the expert loves, to dive deep into learning all there is to learn about how to value a power plant. Well, how useful is that information once you've got the power plant appraised? Well, you've got all this other stuff you got to get done. So the technique I use with my experts is I give them a whole lot of specialized tasks. So I'm kind of being sneaky and getting them to multitask by breaking down each of their individual tasks as if it's a standalone task. And then over time, they start to see how they interrelate and interlace. And pretty soon you've got this, highly specialized expert that becomes an expert in a lot more things. And so generally that's how I deal with my experts. In-house training and all that, it's very difficult because they really want to learn about something very specific rather than general knowledge that you're going to get from your typical courses. So giving them those opportunities and guiding them towards things that you want them to learn, rather than just letting them go off and say, hey, this is interesting. I think that's the best approach for an expert. Yes.
I'm raising my hand. This is very different than us standing in person with our pretty shoes that we wear together.
Yes, our pretty shoes.
So I just wanted to comment on the expert. I had a boss a long time ago that firmly believed that each employee should be an expert, period, end of story. So it was frustrating for me because I'm that type of person that I wanted to learn, where I feel like most people, most employees, are willing to learn something different. But oh my gosh, it was so odd that you came in every day, 9 to 5, you did the same exact thing every day, and you weren't able, with this manager that I had, you weren't able to learn anything new because it wasn't acceptable. So, and again, it's a very distinct managerial style. It wasn't working for me. So,
Yeah, and the problem with that is when that person isn't in or quits or leaves their position, and then now you've got this position that nobody knows how to do because the only expert just left. So
right,
yeah,
right,
the experts are definitely they're challenging.
yeah,
The
yeah,
next one we have is creator. Creators are innovative and creative, and they like problem solving. I think that as an employee, this is probably the category I fit into the best. So to motivate them, you want to give them the opportunity to show that innovation and show that creativity. And finding the right role for your creator is the key. So you can have a creator that's in a data collection role where they're not able to use that creative part of their mind. They're just collecting data elements, and you may have performance issues with that employee. They may start showing up late, not coming in, doing just enough. And it's really because you're not motivating them well. It's not that they're a bad employee. It's just that you're not tapping into what their core personality requires to be at their best. And that is something that allows for that creative mind to explore. So sometimes it's putting that person into a higher role or a lesser role, but one that allows that creativity. And what I found of my creators is they're usually that go-to person in the office. So you really need to pay attention. If someone has a computer problem, the printer doesn't work, the camera system, who are they going to find out how to solve their issue? And then you've got to get a hold of all that and then have them document it, because that is what I found my creators. So I've got these great people with all these answers to all these questions. You get them to put it down, and all of a sudden you've got this great resource for all the problems that can happen in your office. So if you can rein in that creative energy and that innovation in a way that helps not just other employees but the entire agency, that's where you got to go with your creators, and not put them into that go nowhere job where that brain is just stagnant.
So it sounds to me like you respect a creator type of employee personality. And do you think that the other employees in the office respect that person as well?
Yeah, almost universally that they do, because of their knowledge. And I have an Excel expert, and all the employees go to that person if they've got a question on Excel. And yeah, there is a respect that comes from that, and I think that motivates them as well. They're maybe part searcher. I think creator and searcher naturally go together.
Mm.
And so yeah, I think when they have both of those personality traits, they're very, very motivational to other employees, because boy, I wish I knew all that. I wish I could do all that. Well, if you can get them to document all that, there's no reason that everyone else can't know all that.
And that's part of that cross training. That's good, right? Yeah, good.
Absolutely.
So now we have the spirited employee. They seek freedom and independence. They want to control their own time. They want to control their own projects. And while they're still offering support, you're still offering support, you have to be really careful as a manager not to micromanage these employees. But you have to set boundaries. I feel like micromanaging a spirited employee will make them stagnant. And that, in my opinion, is not necessarily a good thing. But again, you just have to reiterate that there are boundaries, and you, at the end of the day, you're the boss.
Yeah.
I love those two. Love it.
Yeah, and again, I think we stated that, these aren't positive or negative,
Right.
but you really can have, a positive version and a negative version. And I think when you have the positive version, again, they're going to have some of these other personality traits. Someone who just wants to do their own thing all day, as long as they're doing the right thing, it's great. It's when they're not that you might have some issues. So finally, we have the searcher, and the searcher seeks to make a difference. They're motivated by praise and regular feedback, which I think every personality type will be. The searcher is a great personality to have on your staff. They're very easy to motivate because they want to make a difference. You know, give them the opportunity to make a difference and never take credit. I think if you've ever been in a position where you had a great idea and then your boss took credit for it, you know, it's really demotivating. And so you have to be really careful with your searchers that they do want to make the difference. And if they came up with the idea, then they deserve that credit and they deserve the praise that comes with it. And so with my searchers, you know, I let them be creative. And again, I think they are creators almost exclusively in that they're going to have ideas of how to make a difference. Being told, do this, it'll make a difference is different than coming up with your own way. And mentoring and supporting a searcher is one of the great bonuses from being a manager. Seeing what they can do, seeing what your motivation and their desire to make a difference, what the combination of those two, what are you going to get? It's so exciting as a manager to have one of those personalities on your staff.
Yeah. So one of my management styles, and I make it perfectly clear that if as an employee will walk into my office with a problem, I also want them to walk into my office with a solution. Most of the time, I'll take their recommendations as executive decisions, but I need to hear it. And don't just come in with problems, come in with problems and solutions. That seems to have worked very, very well for me. So of these 9, like you just mentioned, you know, that they're not necessarily positive or negative, but it's how we handle them as managers that will result in the positive or negative behavior of our employees. So as we went through these and as you reread them as the audience, think about your employees, which categories they fit in, and I'm sure that they fit into multiple categories, and that might change the way you treat them a little bit, because I know it has for me. One more thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is your hiring process. Very different for me. We'll talk about that in another slide, but because I have a union and you don't, Melissa, I think that most municipalities outside of New York, of course, do not deal with unions. But when you're hiring somebody, you not only have to look at their capabilities to fill that position, their qualifications, but in my opinion, you have to look at their personalities as well. And if they can work with the other personalities that you already have in your office. It's hard enough as it is, the day-to-day grind. Now you bring in a different personality who's a difficult personality, doesn't work well in your office. And I believe that if you are going to hire somebody and they're trainable, it's more important that they get along with your employees and you can train them to be that qualified employee that you're actually looking for. So it's a combination of the two.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it's like a fine line.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I kind of chuckled because I've been doing a lot of interviewing since I've been in this position. We have not been fully staffed in the 2 years that I have worked for the county. And I always joke because and they're all in the residential department. And my residential manager will do like an hour-long interview. And I always tell him, I know in the first 5 minutes
Me too.
whether that person is going to fit or not. And, you know, if I start playing with my pen or looking around, you know, they always take it like, oh, no, this isn't going to be a good one. Personality to me is more important because you can train those other skills. You can't train, you know, I don't know that you can train a freeloader to be an entrepreneur, but you can certainly train someone how to do data collection and work within a camera system, certainly. So.
Yep. So the other part of the management style that I have adopted is that I try to adapt those personalities and these employee types to my management style. There's been a lot of times where I've found myself bending out of my comfort zone with my management style to accommodate the needs of my employees. That seems to have been working for me throughout my 30-year career, because it makes them more productive. If they feel that basically I have their back and their personalities, you know, they seem to have my back as well. So the more productive your employees are and the more loyal that they are to you, the better off you come across as an assessor. So, or as a manager.
Yeah, and that's why we identified with those 4 different types of management, is because we do. And I say that all the time too. There's no one size fit all
Right.
strategy. You have to learn how to, if I have 35 employees, I have to have 35 management styles that
At
are
least.
customized for each person.
At least.
And I'm not going to figure that out if I don't get to know them. So.
Right. Oh, I agree with that. Yep.
So motivating different personalities is definitely demanding. And while all of our offices are going to have one or any number of these personality types, if you understand them, it will make you a better manager and it'll encourage your employees to be the best that they can be.
So that's probably, I love the little carrot on the screen up there. It's great. And this is actually one of my favorite slides out of the whole presentation because it sums it up. So, Melissa, I have a couple questions for you. 1 or 2 questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, I've got a few for you too.
Uh-oh. All right, here we go. So I'm just gonna, not distracting. So my first question for you. I'm gonna throw a scenario out and see how you handle it, because I don't know about anybody else, but I seem to have this problem periodically. So you have an employee who's late, does just enough to get by. How do you handle that?
Well, of course, I've gotten to know the employee. I know what personality that they have. So, starting from that place of knowing that person, because it is very specific. So I've had this happen any number of times during my career, and it really depends on what the motivation or what the cause is behind, their poor performance. So if it's the example that I gave earlier, where they were just in the wrong role, I've had that exact scenario that we were talking, that you just asked me about, and I ended up promoting the individual, which, I got a few sideways glances from some people, but I knew the person was very intelligent, and I knew what that person was capable of. And so I recognized it was not the right role. And sometimes that seems like rewarding bad behavior, but I think it was my bad behavior. I didn't put that person in the right role, and, bad on me. And so I rectified it. That employee became stellar in their new role because they were engaged and they were motivated the way they needed to be. Now, on the other flip side, sometimes that's not the case, and they're just, they're not performing because maybe they're a freeloader, or, they're at the end of their career and they're just not bringing it, like they have been. In that case, I use a performance improvement plan. I talk about them enough so that people don't fear them. Well, they probably do fear them, but it isn't a tool to terminate someone. It is a tool, much like the evaluation, to set the expectations, very specific short-term expectations that say, listen, you need to come in on time every day. You need to, complete this much work, quotas, production, whatever. And then monitoring that employee on a very frequent weekly basis until they either pick up the pace, improve their performance, or we have to go down and take other steps towards either, some kind of, it could be termination, but at least you set the expectation, say, listen, this is what we need. You do this, we're all good. If you don't, then we have to maybe go a little farther.
Do you think you try and push that employee outside their comfort zone to maybe get more work out of them?
Well, that was my first example. I pushed the one where I felt like he was, in the wrong role. I did. It was the job that person was promoted to was a more challenging role. It required education, training, and entirely different skill set. And once that person was engaged intellectually, all the other issues didn't have weren't a problem. Because when you're at work and you're bored and you're always thinking about what you would rather be doing, I think that's how those distractions happen. So keeping that person engaged, and it's really about how much someone wants to be pushed, how much they want to be motivated, because we can be the greatest motivators in the world. If that employee isn't open to being motivated, you're not going to be successful, because it does require a give and take.
Okay, so here is my next $64,000 question.
Okay.
And I don't have to bring up the white elephant in the room, which of course is COVID-19. So unfortunately, we've had to switch gears, and now this is our new norm for now, anyway. Have you found yourself changing your management style because of COVID?
Well, I think I've changed almost everything since COVID. I don't know that my management style so much because I think, again, we have 35 employees. We have 30, but how the tools that I use to reach my employees, everything has changed. So, being in Florida and being New York, we're almost at the opposite ends. You were hit really, really hard at the beginning. We're actually being hit hard right now. It's really required a lot of creativity and innovation in order to manage this. So in Sarasota, we have 65 employees that work for the property appraisers, and we got them deployed working at home in a week. And we did
Wow.
that despite the fact that we only had 5 laptops for 60 people. We had to beg, borrow, and steal. We had to get VPN set up. We had to completely change our entire process to a paperless process, which is something that was long overdue. We don't need to be printing, tens of thousands of pieces of paper and marking them up and bringing them to data entry. We became completely paperless. We started looking at all these different tools that we could use, not just for this quarantine situation, but going forward. If you look at a lot of the tools we're using on a cost benefit analysis, they really make sense. Desktop reviews and virtual appointments. So that's my goal, is to do all of our inspections virtually, where we're just looking at pictures from the interior rather than sending 2 people out to do that inspection. And we're getting street level imaging so that we can be at our desks more than out in the scary public where COVID exists. And then communication, I think, it's been the big challenge for me. And from the very first time when COVID became a thing, it was March 13th, I'll never forget. I started writing an email every single day to every employee member. I have written over 100 emails at this point, and each one of them has a YouTube link to a song. And we submit songs for the group. They're all PG rated. And it became this really great way. And then I'm always looking for ideas to engage and to get people to stay connected. We send pictures of our high school pictures, and one thing that's interesting about you that nobody else knows. And so what you get is this great email collaboration that is unfortunately is a poor proxy for being in person, but it really has kept us connected. And so we use Teams meetings, and so we have to use all these tools just to keep that connection, which I think is so important. I miss walking around and chatting with my staff, seeing what they're doing, seeing the looks on their face. If you can tell if they're having a bad day or a good day. I really miss that. So it's been quite a challenge to manage in the new norm.
Wow, that's very interesting how you're handling your staff, because my next question was going to be, how are you doing with the morale?
Yeah.
But I love that idea that you're sending the emails. It's kind of goofy and it's funny and it's silly, but everybody seems to be engaged, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been phenomenal. I mean, I use the analogy, I throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. There's some day I get like two responses, and then there's some day when I'll hear from almost everybody.
Wow.
So I don't know that I would have made the commitment if I had known it was going to be a couple hundred emails. But now that I've done it, and I think, that's important too. You've got to lead by example. And when you make a commitment, you got to follow through. So I've got another, I don't know, maybe 50 before we head back. So it's been quite the experience. But morale is really good. I mean, it ebbs and flows. It does. And, we have to find ways to monitor what they're doing, which is actually pretty easy when you're doing remote because,
Right.
we have VPN and Big Brother's watching. So that part actually been easy. So I've got some questions for you.
Uh-oh.
All right, so it's crunch time. You're just doing your reassessment again. It's crunch time. Which 2 personality types would you want at your side when you really got to get a job done and you don't have much time?
Crunch time.
You know, notices are going out next week.
Oh yeah, I know, crunch time. I think if I had to pick a personality type, I know I talked about this before, but I would feel most comfortable probably with the director. They're confident and they're willing. And again, I mentioned it before in New York, you know, we have unions, so they work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. At 5 o'clock, they're at the timestamp punching out, you know, with the time clocks. I've not, first of all, I've not found that with any of my staff, so I've gotten lucky. But I feel like the director's going to be there till the end. They're going to make sure that I get my job done, they get their job done, and the other employees. I'd have to say that would be like 100% guarantee that that's who I'd want.
Yeah. Yeah, I might want a creator on there too in case something goes wrong, which it always does.
Which it always does. That's true.
So
Okay,
you brought
change
up
my answer.
So you brought up the union. How does that change how you can manage having a union? Does that change your management style, or how is that different from what I'm doing?
It's very, very different than from what you're doing. I am bound by who I can hire under civil service laws, and whether they become when an employee has become a permanent employee, it's virtually impossible to get rid of that employee if necessary. So I have had to work harder. No disrespect to anybody who doesn't, but I've had to work harder to keep my employees motivated because they are who they are, and I have them. And if they're just that, you know, freeloader or director, two ends of the spectrum, they're mine. Until they decide to leave or I leave, they're mine. So it's definitely been a challenge with that. And I come from the private sector, so if you didn't produce, you were out looking for another job. It's really not like that here under civil service laws. It takes a lot. You have to justify it, and you have to document it. And, you know, it's fortunate for us in New York where, albeit we have unions, well, not all of New York has unions, but down where I am personally, we have that union. And like I said, we have to hire off of a list. You have to take an exam. We have to hire off of a list. You go through the probationary period. And if you're not a good interviewer type of person, like you said, you know, in the first 5 minutes, I feel like I've been fortunate with that too. But if not, you're stuck. But again, I'm knocking on my head that I've been very fortunate. At the moment, I have to say, I have a phenomenal staff. And I'm not saying that because they could potentially watch this video. I'm just saying that because that comes from the bottom of my heart. The better off my staff is, the better off it makes me look. So I've really gotten lucky.
Well, I'm sure you're being humble because rarely have I seen a phenomenal staff without a phenomenal manager at charge. So I am sure that there is a very strong connection between why you have that staff and your own management style.
They tell me that actually. And my staff tells me that I am actually the best boss. Ha ha, I'm sure they're saying that to my face. But I think that it's working. My management style is working with my 10 employees, 15 personalities, because I mold to them. The more productive I can get them to be, the more creative I can get them to be. When I first took over here, where I am currently 16 years ago, we've changed. We've changed night and day. We are into the 21st century.
I know, I remember.
I know, we work together, and it's very different. And there was a little bit of difficulty in my staff changing the way that they think, changing the way that they work. And we work together to get everybody to be on the same page. And you were with me as my contractor, so you saw that change take place.
Right.
It was interesting. It was an interesting time. And we finally settled down and everybody's doing what they're doing. And now we have COVID-19, so we've changed again. So subject to change at a drop of a hat. I actually think that we're running out of time. So did I answer your questions?
You did, thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure if the audience has any questions for us, but we'll be happy to entertain them. So we'll stay on for a few more minutes, but I think that I would like to wrap up. And as you, I hope that you were able to take something away from this. I know that I was, you and I were putting it together. So do you have any last words, Melissa?
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed it.